Have you guys ever loaded into a game, looked at the ship lineup, and wished that you could invent a DeLorean with a flux capacitor to travel back in time and prevent yourself from ever getting involved with this game to begin with? Well, this past week I have considered it and done some adequate research on flux capacitors here.
To generate the 1.21 gigawatts of electricity.
1.21 gigawatts! 1.21 gigawatts!
Unfortunately, Wargaming, in their infinite wisdom, decided to add in some pan-European missions for the new pan-European line. And that, I assume, is what caused this mass influx of 4 and 5 destroyer games. I actually got a screenshot from Mr. Heisman about a week or so ago where I think he had a 7-on-7 destroyer game with like a carrier. So you couple a carrier into the 4 destroyers on each team here, and 50% of these ships are not going to be spotted for a majority of this game. Now, let the record show, I understand that there is only the pan-European line of destroyers, and Wargaming did actually indicate that it could be done with any ship type here in the missions tab. But when that nation only really consists of destroyers, you're essentially just handcuffing the matchmaking to be filled with a bunch of destroyers. And of course, this will only last for a few weeks, but I remember back when the Japanese or Shimakaza mission was done, it was 4 and 5 Shimas on every team, and that just creates for miserable gameplay and experiences in matchmaking. So in order to be different than a majority of the content creators who go out and try and enrage the community, I'm going to try and offer a few solutions that I have thought of. Now, of course, these will never be implemented, but Wargaming, if you are listening, you could add in a few other missions at the same time as your destroyer missions, or, missions that only have one line of ships, in this case, the Pan-European destroyer line. And add in a few cruiser missions, maybe of a different nation or just in general, so that way the missions, or the matchmaker rather, is not flooded by people trying to accomplish pure destroyer missions. But as a player, there is still things you can do at the same time, and one of them we did in this game. We went on out in a Russian light cruiser with a radar, as well as coupled ourselves with Mr. Bill here, who was in the Schultz there, and the Schultz does a pretty good job with some team support of hunting down those enemy destroyers.
JMU leads North Carolina? Oh my god, dude.
In an alternate reality where I, the Supreme Leader, has ultimate control of the Wargaming matchmaker here, I would, well, I'd first ban carriers, but no. And then secondly, I would top out the max fillable slots for destroyers at 3. I think anything over 3, you're in for a rough time. However, certain games like this one in particular allow for a little bit of a different style of play. You expand your play, you change it up a little bit, and it also creates for some unique gameplay as well. If each game was limited to 3 destroyers, 3 cruisers, 3 battleships all the time, I'm sure we would get tired of that as well. So just go with the flow, and in this particular case, just absolutely abuse the enemy destroyers with your HE while angling to the enemy, and also racking up a pretty nice game in the process. This game in particular, as well as the other 4 and 5 destroyer games, teaches us a few things. Number 1, patience, kind of setting up in this position here, and number 2, target selection. You actually see we just got what I believe is a permanent fire on the destroyer who just went undetected, and now we are trying to shoot this Z-23 as he kites away here. We probably used our radar a little bit prematurely in that situation, but I did want to kind of give Bill there in the Schultz and our other destroyers in the Cap a little bit of an advanced warning of the ships kind of heading towards us. You couple that with the low concealment of the Donskoy, I think ours is 12 kilometers, and an 11.7 radar, and we pretty much have a stealth radar. But with that kill on the Z-23 there, that is our first elimination, and more is to come. We're kind of backing up and angling into this position here. And something to note, we talk about target selection. The 10K that I did to the destroyers there, or 20K to the multiple different destroyers, is worth more than the 10 or so K that I'm doing to this Schultz here. XP is percentage based. So for example, let's say I do 10K, which is approximately 50% of the health of that Z-23 there, and I do 10K to the Schroeder. The 10K that I did to the Z-23 is going to be worth more in overall XP, and XP to me, for the most part, is just the best way to measure how you are doing as a player. Anyone can go out in a Shimakaze or a Yamato or some other ship and get a 100K and say that they had a good game, when in reality them doing damage sitting at the back of the map while their team suffered up trying to get the objectives is part of the reason they lost. Now again, there's 18,000 different variables in each particular game, and in certain instances going out and doing damage is the way to quote unquote have a good game. But in the overall effort of trying to be a team player, putting your ship in the right position, which is generally near the objectives, is a much better way to do that. And unfortunately, the sad truth is that most players don't really care. However, if you guys are watching my videos and you're out there and you're like, you know what, I agree with you, I like that, then you're probably part of the advanced part of the player base, as the statistics aren't looking too great for the average player, which we do have a video coming out about. But anyway, that is for a different topic. Here, I'm not gonna lie, this position is a little bit tricky. The Donskoy does have kind of a weak bow, we will call it. However, your side plating, as we kind of talk to those battleships trying to get damage at the back of the map there to come on up and push forward, we're kind of angled here. However, I typically like to be angled in the reverse position so that way I can more easily escape. As you see, the Bismarck get a pretty decent salvo on us. Luckily, we were backed up, but there was 2, 3, 4 penetrations, and there is a gun knock. So if we have to take on both of these ships alone, we probably won't survive unless we can either go concealed here or push up with the cover of this island. However, considering that Bill is there in the middle, we do have a battleship a little bit behind us, and there is a destroyer in the ACAP. We are rather protected in this situation. And again, talking about armor angling, while this is not the textbook case of angling, we are still within the auto bounce region for a majority of these salvos. Instead of retreating though, we notice that the Aleutian has smoked up here. We pop our radar. He is half health. He did actually use a little bit of his heal. He decides to go forward and kind of taking these carefully placed shots. You can see that he was backing up. He had stopped though, and then he decides to go forward. Pay attention to the smokestack of ships. That will indicate the direction they are going. You can see that the smoke is trailing behind his ship there, indicating he is going forward. Advanced destroyer and cruiser players will use a tactic known as throttle jockeying. They will wait for you to shoot or anticipate your shot, as we do sometimes. Typically, battleships on average have a 28 to 30 second reload, so if you can kind of keep that clock running in your head, you guys will see me sometimes on stream count it down. I'm like, he's going to shoot in 3, 2, and we just either hit the brakes or accelerate out of the ellipse of where they are aiming. So in order to counter that, right, we're talking about countering destroyer play in this situation. Shoot one salvo, especially if you're in a light cruiser like this, or even a faster firing cruiser. Shoot one salvo, wait for them to make their move, and then follow up with the 2 and 3, 4 shots. Again, it's part of the nature of the game, right? Destroyers and cruisers don't have that much health, and in turn, most of them are a little bit more maneuverable than battleships per se, but battleships do get the advantages of doing a shit ton of damage if you can catch a ship in the right set of circumstances. Now that being said, I feel like there are some times when you catch a cruiser broadside and they just absolutely, it's like 2 overpens and you're just, throwing your controller against the wall. Now, in certain instances, right, we had a game in the Hipper the other day, and the Italian cruisers come to mind. The armor scheme of those cruisers can and will protect them from either up-close citadels or citadels in general, but on average, I just think a lot of cruiser players tend to think they might be a little bit better than they are because of certain factors of RNG. But again, it's all a team-oriented effort there. When everybody shoots at the destroyers and they're all gone, then there's nothing left to farm but the battleships. Again, kind of going back to a Facebook post we had a little bit ago where people were like, I hate destroyers, it's so unfair that they're invisible, and it's like... And there are certainly those games when you get that destroyer teammate who decides it's a good idea to avoid all responsibility, avoid the cap, go carrier sniper, some other obnoxious, gesture by the destroyer. And yeah, that is pretty frustrating. But on average, there is a ton you can do, even in a battleship, solo against a destroyer. Don't sail in a straight line, right? Adjust your course, change your speed, try and catch the destroyer around the corner. Last night, we just dev struck a destroyer in the Florida because we caught him going around the corner. there is plenty that you can do, even as a solo battleship against a solo destroyer there in an isolated fight. Part of this game and part of the factor of being good is managing those situations and trying to change the outcome. That being said, another great way to try and get a better grasp of how that situation occurs is doing something like this, playing a cruiser, playing a battleship, or playing a destroyer. A lot of players, now of course this game is battleship heavy, and notably it is a lot of fun playing a battleship, racking up a mass damage total there, getting the devastating strikes, but this game has, for the most part, the rock, paper, scissors concept. Now of course the carrier just fucks that all completely up. On average though, it doesn't matter what ship you're in, there is still something that you can do. Even if it is just YOLO rush in, ram, and die, and move on to the next match.
Coming out here to DPM.
Speaking of doing all we can do, though, here we are utilizing our destroyer spots while still trying to rain on that Flander who has pushed into the cap. And with that connection on the Bismarck there is our Confederate 6 ships that we have done 20% of damage to. And if there is one medal on top of the high caliber there that I try to get in every game, it is that Confederate medal. That means you have been everywhere. You're like Johnny Cash, man. I've been everywhere. You're shooting everything. You're getting damage on multiple different targets. You're positioning well. That, and of course the Dreadnought medal as a battleship player, means you were in the right position or you were being farmed by a fire spamming cruiser. But before the elimination on that Flander there, this game was essentially a toss-up. If we decided to just YOLO rush in and die and say, you know what, this is a 4-destroyer game, I just don't care about playing it, we probably lose this game. You look at the team lineup, and like I mentioned before the elimination of that Flander, it is dead even. Now, of course, we do have the cap advantage thanks to our Champagne working his way all the way around into the Bravo cap, putting himself essentially in a crossfire there with the carrier and the Bismarck. And as he requests for support, but just sometimes why it's just positioning matters. But there with that fire, we actually have our way up to 16 fires. So a little bit better than the standard fire chance that we typically get. And there was actually a little bit of a blind fire. And that blind fire you could see was just a kilometer off. We were looking at the mini-map and the carrier was spotting that Lucian. However, he does decide to shoot at us. I think he thought that he was spotted. And this is actually a topic in my Discord as we just get the fire and the double strike on that Bismarck there. So one of my favorite medals to get, timing up kills like that, is just... I mean, I can't imagine a better feeling in the world than getting a double strike in World of Warships Legends. But back on that topic of the carrier spotting, that destroyer was not spotted, surface detected, as you can see here with the eye icon on the screen. When you are spotted by planes, you are only spotted to that particular set of planes or carrier per se. I'm not exactly sure how it works for the hybrids. However, we took that blind fire and he must have thought that he was detected. One thing to note though, if you shoot, I believe, and again, someone probably needs to correct me on this, if you shoot while you are carrier spotted and then because your ring is still active for approximately 20 seconds depending on your commander build, you will still be detected if another surface ship comes within your ring. You will then be surface detected, like the eyeball icon here, for the remainder of the time that your ring is still active. Let's say you stop shooting, it would be 20 seconds then. So just something to keep in mind in terms of detection. Like we talked about in a video a couple days ago, there is so much knowledge that I have even yet, to learn or forgotten about as we just kind of play for memes a majority of the time. A beautiful 30-59 there with 4 kills, Confederate high caliber, first blood and double strike, with unfortunately Bill just yoinking my Kraken there. But there is Mr. Donskoy with Nikolai Kuznetsov there. More free-to-play type build. I know some people are really into that, and I think I'm gonna try eventually. I have all these videos in my mind, but of doing just a new free-to-play account, and in order to show you guys the best way to grind if you're a new player or if you are pure free-to-play. One more thing I want to mention before I go here is in those 4 destroyer games, the total percentage of damage is obviously less, but that means it is a lot easier to get a high caliber if you do even 80 to 90,000 damage. Again, the high caliber medal is 30% of the total enemy's HP pool, and on top of that, you do have to damage at least 4 ships. So something for you guys just to keep in mind there for those destroyer games. I hate them, you hate them. For the most part, a majority of the community hates them. There are those few rare exceptions who like watching from the chair in the hotel room, but no, I'm just kidding. But we have to deal with them, so go out, play Radar Cruisers when these stupid challenges are available. But that's the video. Wargaming, if you're watching, please don't allow these. Just put in some different challenges, man. I don't know what else to say. But that's the video. Love you guys. Have a great day. I'm out. Peace.